you probably know this. I've read a whole lot about your 5-season plan, but I know that plans do evolve as you make a show and you hear the response to the season that you just shot. So what of that plan would you say changed the most given your experience shooting season 1 and then also how people reacted to the material in season 1?
Well, I mean,
we might have different answers to this.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, yeah, because like, well, I don't know if this is like lame, but it's like there is a part of me that doesn't want to answer because it's like I hate like the idea of somebody in like kind of the audience like a feeling like, you know, the thing that they got wasn't somehow like whole, because it's like in kind of my mind, you know, there are lots of changes, big and small, that happen as part of this process, and it's one of the best parts of the process. But I guess like I tend to think of it as like, well, that's the way it was always supposed to be. It's not that we couldn't get the thing or like this didn't work out. It's just that's not what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be this. So
yeah, I'm with you, Bart. Like some years ago, I think there was an experiment in Hollywood where people could choose their own adventure. There was a play running called Sheer Madness where you got to choose the ending. And they sort of found out that it really didn't work because people wanted to be grabbed by the lapels and taken through a story that they felt was really cohesive. And so I'll answer for myself. I mean, the audience reaction is we're so grateful for it and it's so meaningful to us, but we can't let it affect too much our process in the writer's room. We must trust our own impulses. And as we start herding the cats, metaphorically speaking, of our writers and like brainstorming and blue skying, things start to emerge that just instinctively feel right to us. And so I'm not saying we ignore our audience feedback. Of course, it's really interesting and meaningful to us. But at the same time, we've got to keep the integrity of the story that we're telling and try and not allow that to affect us too much, because then it becomes sort of like a slightly impure process.
Mm-hmm. With that in mind, is there anything, forget the audience reaction, is there anything that instinctively emerged via the making of season 1 where you discovered that there was more to something than you ever realized was there originally and you got to expand upon that in season 2?
Oh.
I think that there were a few things that we always hoped we could do, but season 1 gave us the confidence to dig deeper into. I think a great example is the family dynamic amongst the Sudeikis, because Warren Cole and Sarah Desjardins are both incredible. And had we not gotten so incredibly lucky with their casting, I don't know that we would have been able to explore as deeply. But because they were both so great in season 1, we were like, well, let's go for it. Like, let's really expand on this. And I think that, you know, we always knew that Shauna's relationship to her daughter and her relationship to motherhood was going to be a big deal. But knowing that we have such an incredible game actor in Sarah allowed us to just give her more to do, which was really fun.
I would add that when Warren came on and he did such a great job portraying Jeff, you know, Jeff could have just been the schlubby accessory to Shauna's storyline and like the husband that was used as the butt of the joke. But in fact, what wound up happening because of their chemistry and we hope because of the writing, you know, we start to root for them. And they're a very grounded, meaningful couple to our audience now. And that is such a pleasure. So we get to explore, you know, where they can go from here.
And Warren took a real leap of faith with us.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we knew that early on, we wanted to pull a little bit of a bait and switch with Jeff. You know, we introduced him in the pilot as a teenager, and he is kind of an idiot. And, you know, then when we first introduce him, it's clear that this is a marriage that kind of came from more of a place of guilt and sort of self-justification for what Shauna had done than, you know, true love. But we kept trying to essentially assure Warren. We were like, because, you know, again, I think that he was maybe rightfully concerned for a little bit that he was just kind of the doofy husband. And we were like, you got to go with us, Warren. Like, we will earn this back. And we talked about it a lot in the room. And we were just like, we're gonna win people over to Jeff. Like, that is our goal. And if we don't succeed, then we have not done our jobs correctly.
Well, can confirm great success in that respect.
That's one of the things that was very funny was like it kind of happened in the room where it's just like people were just like, I really like Jeff. Like, and it was like very,
sort of a surprise for all of us, right?
Yeah.
You know who else everyone really likes? Van. And I might have seen some quotes floating around that originally you were planning to kill off Van
100%.
in season 1.
Yes.
Many questions about that. one, when and how was that character originally going to die? And now moving forward, what like corners are you able to explore specifically because that character is back in the equation here?
I think what's interesting is that it's not that she was ever definitely meant to die. It's just that the opportunity for her death kept coming up, and then we kept writing away from it. And I think part of that is very much a credit to Liv, because they are phenomenal. And even, in the pilot itself, Van was not given a particularly big part. And Liv found some great moments. Some of them were scripted, but some of them were improv. I think one of my favorite things that Van does in the pilot, and this was all Liv, was as Jackie saying, Yellowjackets with me, and is about to give them a talking to, Liv decided to just go back and get a little bit more beer. And we were like, that is such an incredible Van character moment. And, just the more fun these characters are, the harder it is to part with them. I mean, the one who was legitimately going to die in the pilot from our conception and our pitch was Laura Lee. And Jane brought so much humanity to that part that, we were like, okay, well, I think we have to kill somebody at some point.
Right, and it was really hard. It's like, in a lot of ways, Jane made it a self-fulfilling prophecy because she is so good. Like we didn't kill her at that point when what Ashley just referred to, but because she was so good in the course of the season, we thought that would be a very meaningful character death, and we decided to go for it in episode 8 last season.
And so R.I.P. Rachel. Rachel became the Laura Lee.
What smart ways to pivot, though, and recognize the talent that you have. Speaking of that, in a sense, so I was really curious about your experience doing this because it was something that really impressed me about the beginning of season 2. How do you figure out how to incorporate Yellowjackets that were technically weren't there all along, but now you're presenting them as characters that like we need to believe had been there the entire time in season 1, and know that the audience feels that naturally, I guess, because I didn't think that was going to work, and I was surprised how quickly I fell into step with that group.
Yeah, I think that part of it is I think that a television is not a kind of a novel or kind of a feature. Like, you don't have the entire plan, and like for better and for worse. And I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that like this is an extreme kind of a statement that I will like back away from 10 minutes after this kind of interview is over. But like leaning into the realities of kind of the medium that you're kind of working in, like whether it's like a limit or an expansiveness of it, I think is almost always the right answer. Like, and so just to acknowledge that it's like, okay, we can't, cast all of these people in 2 timelines, right from day one. That's just not financially viable. But then just sort of like, like doing it in a way that's not trying to pull a fast one, that is trying to be as like non like bumpy as possible, but also says, no, like you. We kind of know we're not getting one by you. Just seems to be like the best way to proceed.
Don't regret saying that. I feel like it's well worth talking about balancing the business with the art, because that's a really important part of finding success here.
Absolutely, a production reality, and I think that some of our audience is savvy to that, and some are less so, because how could they be? They're not in the business. But the fact is that in season 1 we were dealing with COVID, which meant we had to have smaller sets, and we did make it difficult for ourselves. It's because of the isolation of the cabin. We knew that there were going to be other characters, but you can't cast somebody phenomenal and then give them one line or two every once in a while. So we knew that we were going to have to play it this way. And hopefully, people go with it. And we got very lucky also in that Maya Lowe, who plays Jen, was around first season and really impressed us. I mean, that was actually one of our first instincts in season 2, was as opposed to recasting all of those parts, we thought, Maya was great. Like, let's bring Maya in and see what she can do. And it turns out she can do a lot. Yeah. So that worked out really well. But yeah, it really is just a casting reality. If you know that you're not going to be able to truly develop those characters until later, you really can't cast it until you can.
Yeah, and you really want to get the audience leaning in on the main core group first, right? Before you do sort of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and their point of view. So once we decided that, like, okay, now they're invested in our main characters, then you could really ask the question of, like, well, what are the other girls thinking about what's happening in our storyline?
Yeah.
And so, that's the Crystal storyline that we now sort of excavate this season. And I think, like, you let the story lead you into sort of like what you need.
Mm-hmm. And the fact is that at that age, there are cliques and there are sort of hierarchies. And, there are plenty of people that I went to high school with that I barely interacted with and vice versa, So it actually makes a certain amount of sense, obviously, because of the size of the cabin and where we are. It makes it a little bit trickier. And yeah, I think that what was really fun was starting to see some personalities outside of our core group. And, there are a couple of moments where Jenna, who plays Melissa, just like nailed a couple lines. It's like, she's really funny. This is great. And then, we all kind of fell in love in the writer's room with Crystal pretty early on. So she's so good.